Hello, good morning, I should say, at least here. I am Kyle, this is Give Pause Hobby, and welcome back to The Element. This is not for more poetry, though that probably will be returning at some point. This is for a different crazy project entitled Asymmetric Exercises, which are exercises written for the trumpet. They are things that, are designed to help with different elements of playing the trumpet and techniques that are required to, be successful in various different ways. But critically, why I think it's of interest to some people on here, even if you are not a trumpet student or teacher, is because each of the exercises is based off of either the theme, the mechanics, or both in some way of one of the factions of Root. So for those who follow the channel for the content I produce but don't know, I'm a middle school band director and a longtime trumpet player. Trumpet is my main instrument, it's what I play with the guard band, and I have written some things for it before, and I've really wanted to get back into composing again. And for me, someone who doesn't do it all that often, I sometimes arrange for school, but strictly like composing new stuff isn't something I do a tremendous amount of. And I find it can be helpful to have constraints or a specific like aim or goal or structure whenever I embark upon something like this. Inevitably, I stress against that constraint and maybe break out of it because it's self-imposed, so it can be self-lifted. But it is a good way for me to start, so I don't just kind of get that, the composing version of analysis paralysis and then come out with nothing at the end of a session of me trying to write something. So these videos aren't going to be super long. This one will probably be the longest because of this little bit of intro. What I imagine is just giving you a teeny peek into why, as a trumpet player and teacher, I think this is a worthwhile exercise, why I wrote it, and then a slightly longer, connection of how I connected it to the faction in question. First up is the Corvid conspiracy with the exercise entitled Creation by Conspiracy. Not that I want to hide the fact that this is all inspired by Root. It is a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek. Asymmetric exercises inspired by an asymmetric game. But at the bottom of the page, I'm going to have kind of like a little blurb about the faction. Essentially what I'm doing here, but in written format. I am not hiding the fact that that's the inspiration for these exercises, but I didn't want to just name them the faction. I wanted it to be something that references the faction, but isn't just exercise 1. The Corvid conspiracy. So anyways, this one just sort of, I had the idea, I've kind of been kicking around this idea for a while, writing something for each faction. Originally it was going to be more of a full like page length solo work, but I was kind of stalled out on that for a while, and I really do want to get back into writing exercises for the trumpet. So this is perfect, and I said, well, why don't I do that? Shorter, kind of gets me moving towards the end goal that I want. And maybe I can get a little bit more traction. And sure enough, I did. This one just sort of came out of nowhere. And I have this cool, chart that it's like all these different scales, and modes, and you can like push back and forth. It has this like chromatic, like C sharp, D sharp, E, all the way up, and then you like shift it to the side, and you can, the scales and modes have these like windows, and so when you shift the letters, or the note names, then you suddenly have whatever scale that is or mode in that key. And it's a really fun, it's a really cool way for me just to like, try out a bunch of flavors when I'm composing, just going through and trying things in different modes that I don't play in. And the one that stuck with me on this was bebop harmonic minor, and it goes a little something like this. So I just thought that it had like a couple of those surprising moments, like melodically, of kind of subterfuge just by a little bit. And so I thought, this is great. And the whole idea of the additive structure, I don't know, that just sort of like happened. I think it was just because I was playing around with the scale slowly and just like seeing what structure I could make. And then it just sort of came to me like, well, what if I did exactly that? I started with just the skeleton, just like the barest structure. And then I added a little more, and then I added a little more. And this is very kind of the energy of when this gets up and running is very similar to one of the motifs I used in Bigliest, my solo for unaccompanied trumpet. Just kind of like brash, over the top. And what was interesting as I was writing it, musically, it was born first. This is, primarily, first and foremost, it was written in this way as just kind of like again, limitation on me. Like, what can I do to add something with every line to make it more interesting, starting from the barest thing to like eighth notes all the way across. But as a faction, why I thought, this made a lot of sense and it made some connections was because that's sort of how, the Corvids or any kind of organized crime syndicate or underground element might operate. At first, it is very secretive. It is picking and choosing their targets very carefully and only doing a little bit here and there. And over time, building up that head of steam until the very end when, you're Tony Soprano or whoever just like walking around town and people know exactly who you are and are, if they see you or your associates coming by, they know what's potentially going to happen. And you don't necessarily need to be so secretive because you have enough of a network to be protected, or in the game of Root, you have enough plots out. You've put snares in smart places. You've just done all the sneakiness that the crows are good at. And so I think it's a really fun, it's very short. As a trumpet exercise, why I think this is worthwhile, aside from just being a fun little ditty that references a faction in Root, is two things primarily. One, which is purely finger dexterity. There are some kind of passages that use some sequences of notes that, they're just not normal, in quotes. And so our fingers, our muscle memory is not going to be sufficient. We're really going to have to watch carefully, slow it down, work on it. But once we have it, it is this really cool fluid motion that, rewards hard work. The other thing is building patience and the ability to smartly choose a tempo. And I tell this to my students all the time. I say, if you go into a sight reading in an audition, or you're, up in front of a solo and ensemble judge, or whatever it may be, even just your lesson with your teacher, always remember to choose your tempo based off the inkiest part of whatever it is you're playing. And in this case, that's both easy to find, but also easy to forget. It's the very last line. So if you're not thinking about that last line, and you look at the first line, you're like, oh, I could bump, 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 bump. Then by the time you get to the last line, that is going to be a spicy meatball. So make sure that you are thinking about what it's going to become, so you don't allow yourself to totally destroy your chances at playing it, with any amount of accuracy. So with that, here is other me performing it with the music overlay. like I said, this one's probably a little bit longer than the other ones, but I look forward to rolling this series out. I have 2 written. I have a 3rd almost done. I have a 4th that's in the start, like the beginning process. So I wanted to get a little bit of a buffer, so I wasn't feeling like I was forced to just like, you know, there's not a release schedule for this. It's just gonna, when I come up with them, when I have time to write, record, do this, then I'll put them out. But I wanted there to be more of the project in the world before I started like talking at length about it, because it's just, you know, personally I wanted to make sure it was a thing before I talked about it as a thing. So thanks for stopping by, and I've got other things in the works as well, more normal to the channel stuff. So you know, stay tuned, that'll be coming out soon, and we will see you later. Enjoy the music.